Okay, so now I am doing the second part to reading I Survived the Nazi Invasion 1944. Okay, so remember I told you we left off at chapter 3, so I will now read chapter 3. Chapter 3. The soldier marched Max along the dusty road, leading away from the ghetto. He jabbed him in the spine with the sharp tip of his rifle, barking out German commands. Max couldn't understand. They were heading toward town, to the police station. Max was sure. Nobody who was taken there had ever come back. A Nazi flag flew above the building now, angry red with a black swastika. The twisted Nazi cross. Max could see it in the distance, a blood stain on the blue sky. Max's head throbbed from where the soldier had smacked him, but the pain was nothing compared to the fear that churned inside of him. What would the Nazis do to him? And what would happen to Zina, alone in the ghetto? The thought made him so weak he could barely walk. The soldier gave him a hard shove to keep moving. The road was snaked along the river, and from the banks below, Max heard laughter and splashing. The sound felt like a cold slap. He could not think of the last time he'd heard such happy noises, but he could remember so clearly those days before the war. When it had happened, Max and Zena were splashing in the cool, clear river, with not one worry in their minds. When they were younger, they'd play hide and seek with Papa, but sometimes they'd venture too far and get themselves lost. Where'd they wander around, scared in the forest, would swallow them forever. But then they'd hear Papa's voice calling to them, "Max, Zena, where are you?" And Max and Zena would cry out, "Papa, we're here!" As soon as enough, Papa would appear, a smile on his face, and he always said the same thing. "I knew I'd find you." The best times were when Aunt Hannah came along. She was Papa's sister. Just 19 years old, she'd always been more like a friend to Max than a fuzzy old aunt. She'd taken Max and Zena on hikes, jumping with them from rock to rock, singing their favorite songs. People in town gossiped about Hannah, that she was wild, that she cared more about books than finding a husband. Of course, Max knew that Hannah didn't want to get married. Not now. She was saving her money to go to America. "We'll all go to America together," Aunt Hannah would say. "It would be an adventure." Max would picture himself with Zena and Papa and Hannah standing at the railing of the grand ship, looking out over the bright blue ocean. But like everything else in Max's world, the Nazis had shattered that dream. And where was Aunt Hannah now? Max had no idea if she was even alive. The last time he knew she was saved was just one day before they had to move into the ghetto. It was late at night, and Hannah had come to their house. Max was almost asleep when he heard her voice. He'd almost leaped out of bed to see her, but she and Papa were fighting, so Max stayed put. I'm going tonight," Hannah was saying. "We all must go." "Keep your voice down," Papa scolded. Where was Aunt Hannah going? Max strained his ears, but heard no more. Finally, he crept downstairs, hoping to talk to Aunt Hannah himself, but she was gone. And when Max went to her house, the next day, there was no trace of her. "Where did she go?" Max asked Papa. Papa just shook his head, and he looked so sad. Max decided not to ask again, and then Max figured it out. Aunt Hannah had managed to catch her ship to America. She had left them behind without even saying goodbye. Thinking of Aunt Hannah made Max's head throb even more as he trudged along the dusty road. He barely heard the rustling sound coming from the bushes, but the soldier whirled around his pig-like eyes squinting into the thicket of the side of the road. Max's blood froze when he saw a curly blonde head poking through the bushes. Santa! She was crazy to come after him. But of course, he would have done the exact same thing for her. Action! The soldier barked. He aimed his rifle at Santa, pulled back the bolt, and got ready to fire. Chapter 4. No! Max screamed, a strange not feeling boiled inside of him, furious and black and powerful. It didn't matter that the soldier was big as an ox, that he had his own rifle. Max's body seemed to move on its own, fueled by the mix of terror and fury. With all his might, Max threw himself against the man. The soldier teetered for a second and then fell with a furious grunt. The rifle flew out of his hands, sailing through the air. When it landed, the rifle butt hit a rock. Crack! The rifle fired. The soldier shouted out in pain and grabbed his leg. He had been hit by his own bullet. Max stood there stunned as he stared at the blood oozing through the soldier's fingers. The man's eyes bulged with rage as he spat out German curses. He crawled toward his rifle, clawing the dirt with his finger, dragging his bloody leg behind him. Zena shrieked, "Max, come on!" Her voice snapped Max out of his trance. He ran to her. They joined hands and took off through the brush, away from the soldier and the ghetto. He had no idea where they would go, but neither of them looked back, and they moved so quickly it seemed as if they were flying. They pushed aside branches, dodged trees, and jumped over roots and rocks. Thorns raked their legs and snagged their clothes. But they ran until finally their bodies gave out. "I need to rest," Xana gasped, reaching for Max's arm. "Up there," Max wheezed. "We'll hide in that wheat field." They staggered into the field, wading through the golden stalks until the last they collapsed to the ground. They lay there, gulping at the air, trying to catch their breaths. It was a long time before Max's body stopped shaking, before either of them could speak. Finally, Xena turned to him. "We beat them," she whispered. Max looked at his sister, not sure what she meant, but then he understood. Here they were, still alive, not shivering in a jail cell or surrounded by barbed wire. Xena was right. They'd fought their own battle against the Nazis. And they'd won. Max smiled, a little feeling, a small burst of power. But it soon faded because he had no idea what they would do next. Where could they go? The Nazis had invaded every country around Poland, and that blood-red swastika flag now flew over more than 10 countries in Europe. For a Jew, there was no safe place for thousands of miles in any direction, and it wasn't the only Nazis from Germany who wanted to hurt them. Some people in Estes had joined the Nazis in their terror, and this had shocked Max, even though he'd always known that there were those in their own town who looked down on Jewish people. Max remembered one night when he and Xana and Papa were heading to synagogue. They had passed 2 young men who cursed and spat at them as they walked away. "Hey," Max had shouted to them, but Papa grabbed his arm, hurrying him along. "Why did they do that?" Max asks. There is no reason, Papa answered. "Why do they hate us?" Xena asked. "Because they have small minds," was Papa's impatient reply. "It is as simple as that." But Max had pushed back. "I do not understand, Papa. What did we do to them?" "We did nothing," Papa said. "It's always been this way. Jews are different, and some of the people are suspicious of what they don't understand. It makes no sense. Why be cruel to somebody just because they were different? And were Jews really so different from everyone else?" Max thought of his best friend at school. Those boys were just like him. They loved baseball, Tarzan, was their favorite comic, and they stared at pretty girls but were afraid to talk to them. True, his friends went to church on Sundays, and Max went to the synagogue on Fridays and Saturdays. But it seemed like they were all learning the same things: to obey God, to respect their parents, to be honest and kind. And yet Max had seen with his own eyes how some of the neighbors had smiled and cheered when the Jews were marched to the ghetto. Many of the SD's own policemen had helped burn down the synagogue, and they were even more vicious than the Nazis. It seemed to Max that Hitler had struck a match. With a little spark, old suspicions turned to blazing hatred. Then moved closer to Max, now putting her head on his shoulder. "I need to close my eyes," she said grudgingly, "just for a minute." Seconds later, she was fast asleep. Max gently wrapped her around his sister's bony shoulders, holding her tight. It was dark now, and Max struggled to stay alert, to keep watch. But soon the sound of the rustling lulled Max to sleep, till his dreams carried him far away until he found himself on a ship in the middle of the ocean. He stood with Xana, looking out over the water, a salty breeze cooling his face. He could hear Papa's warm laugh and Aunt Anna singing a happy song, until a man's voice jarred him awake. Max looked up, his heart stopped. There was a tough-looking old man standing over them with a rifle. "Get up now," the man said. Okay, I'm going to stop there. We will be on chapter 5, page 25. So, I bet you guys are enjoying the series. I am too. And this is going to be it for the rest, this is going to be it for the video. And please subscribe. Bye.